Hi, Denver Startup Week. I'm Ben Data, CEO of Food Maven and co-chair of Denver Startup Week, the largest free entrepreneurial event in the world, and it's only possible thanks to the support of our sponsors. We have nearly 40 sponsor companies who contribute to make DSW possible. Let's show our love for these companies today and all week long. Thanks to our title sponsors, Downtown Denver Partnership, JP Morgan Chase, Prologis, and Xero. Our track sponsors who have made all the great content you're hearing today possible. Battery 621 in the public place, Capital One Cafe, Colorado Lemon Source, Friday Health, Quizlet, Exactly, Zayo, and Zest. Our track sponsors have made all the great content you're hearing today around this country. Thank you to Wix, Kenzen, MAPR Agency, Obsidian HR, Kickstart Fund, Promontory Mortgage, Molson Coolers. Thank you for your support at Denver Startup. Now let's get to it.
Hi everyone, my name is Monica Skoke, and welcome back to Denver Startup Week. I'm the Region Manager for Middle Market Banking at JP Morgan. Year in a row. From COVID-19 to the social unrest that has rippled across our nation, it has been an unprecedented year. But I'm confident in our resilience and couldn't be more proud to be part of this Denver community. In Colorado, JP Morgan Chase has been a part of the Denver Startup Week family for almost a decade. Throughout the years, we've donated millions to local nonprofits. These nonprofits help lift up businesses owned by minorities, women, and veterans. Our commitment to entrepreneurs and small businesses, especially those in underserved communities, is part of our everyday DNA. JP Morgan Chase has built its reputation on being there for our employees, our clients, and our communities in the most critical times. And today's unprecedented environment is no different. We realize that our actions during this crisis are essential to creating an inclusive recovery and building a more equitable future. During the pandemic, we mobilized efforts to help our customers as we continue to make banking easy, efficient, intuitive, and safe. In February, JP Morgan Chase made a $7 million donation for a global career readiness initiative to give Denver's underserved students access to higher education and real-world experiences. Our goal with this initiative is to equip students with the experiences that will lead to well-paying, in-demand jobs. I'm also proud to share that our employees have worked around the clock to provide critical relief to businesses affected by COVID-19 through the Small Business Administration's Paycheck Protection Program. We help provide businesses in Colorado at an average loan size of $110,000, totaling over $685 million. As a firm, we've taken steps to address the racial, social, and economic inequalities facing the Black community. With long-held racial wounds recently reopened, there is no room for silence or complacency right now. And as a community, we must all fight against racism and discrimination wherever and however it exists. As part of this, JP Morgan Chase's local leadership team has recommitted to creating a more diverse and inclusive culture among all employees, including the 1,300 employees who live here in Colorado. We've also joined Inclusive Economy, a Colorado initiative that brings together local businesses and CEOs with a commitment to diversify our workforce and inspire other businesses to do the same. To close, there's so much inspiring work happening in Denver, and we're thrilled you're here to be a part of this week. Like in so many examples of creativity and innovation that's happening in our world today, the Denver Startup Week team has worked tirelessly to bring all of us incredible content, people, and ideas to help you and your businesses thrive. Thank you, and enjoy this week.
Hello, Denver Startup Week. How's the week going? Some of you are joining us for the first time today, and others have been with us all week. I hope that you're finding this week as exciting and as exhilarating as I am. There's so much to learn, and that's the beauty of Denver Startup Week. We've seen people joining from all over the world, and we've gone virtual. With that came so many benefits, and also we've learned so much. So thanks for hanging in there with us throughout the week. We have nearly 10,000 individuals participating in Denver Startup Week this week. So a true testament to how important it is to our community. Make the most of the week. There's no barrier to entry for Denver Startup Week. Think big, be bold, dream. Startup Week is about bringing everybody together to share ideas, resources, and make things happen. It's a unique opportunity this year to enjoy the content that we have to offer that we're presenting. We're going to be sharing 2020 Denver Startup Week experiences with all of you on our hashtag Den Startup Week. So please post your experiences there. We want to see why you're enjoying Denver Startup Week. I also want to take a moment to recognize our executive leader of Denver Startup Week, Kate Barton. Kate Barton serves as a senior vice president at the Downtown Denver Partnership. But what you don't know is behind the scenes, through her leadership, we were able to bring Denver Startup Week to you virtually this year. So big round of applause to Kate. And if you take a chance, drop a note on social to say thank you, Kate Barton. All right, Denver Startup Week is free thanks to the support of so many amazing sponsors. JP Morgan Chase has been one of our strongest partners from the very beginning, and we're so pleased to have their support as we take Denver Startup Week virtual this year. Today, thanks to the support of JP Morgan Chase, we have an incredible entrepreneurial story for you. I am honored to introduce you to Bill Clerico and let him share this outstanding and inspiring success story. He's the CEO and co-founder of WePay, a leading provider of integrated payments for software platforms. It was acquired by JP Morgan Chase in December 2017, and Bill heads the small business products division for Chase Merchant Services. He founded WePay at the tender age of 23 and led the company as CEO through a challenging pivot. In this process, he raised 5 rounds of financing, totaling over $75 million. Under his leadership and with hardworking values driven by his world-class team, WePay grew revenue to over $100 million annually and achieved profitability, which in the end is what matters, right, Bill? Please welcome Bill Clerico. We're so excited you're here, and we can't wait to hear your story. Thanks for being here. And before we go to you, happy birthday.
Thanks. Yeah, well, it's awesome to be here, Tammy, and just appreciate you guys having me on to share my story. And so, yes, it's my 35th birthday. It's been a long journey since my 22nd. All right, I'm going to try to share my screen here, and we will take this away. All right. Well, hi, everyone. Thanks again for having me and for tuning in. It's awesome to be a part of Denver Startup Week. I wanted to just share a little bit about my story, from starting up and, having to sort of lead the company through some really challenging times and a challenging pivot. And then, ultimately finding product market fit, growing the company and being acquired by JP Morgan Chase. And just a couple of reflections and lessons learned along that journey that might be helpful to someone else starting up. And I actually remember when I was just starting up at WePay, I attended a very similar event like this in Boston, got to hear from some amazing entrepreneurs, and in a large part really inspired me to start a company and saved me some bruises along the way. So my hope here is that I can maybe spare someone else a bruise or two as they embark on their entrepreneurial journey. This is where my journey starts, and it's not the most flattering photo, but it's only actually one of 2 photos that I still have on my phone from 2007 and 2008. And in 2007 and 2008, I had just graduated from Boston College. I was working in investment banking and in cubicle with drops in my Brooks Brothers shirt. And I'll say I worked really hard that year. I wouldn't say I loved my job, but I learned a lot. I got to work with some really amazing entrepreneurs that were building companies, selling companies, acquiring companies, taking companies public. And the more clients, these entrepreneurs, the more I realized that that was really the direction.
Hey, Bill, you're choppy right now, so we're gonna go ahead and stop your video real quick, and then we will get it back up so that we can get your video back. Give us 1 second. Hey, y'all, give us 1 second. It looks like we lost Bill, but he has this link to come right back on. So hold tight and we will be right back with you. Yep. Hey, Bill, you're back.
All right, I'm back. Sorry about that, guys.
Because we were talking about technology before we kicked off, but we have you back and we're ready to go.
Awesome. I'm excited to be back again at Denver Startup Week. What a great opportunity to speak. So let me reshare, and you guys get to see this really flattering photo of me again. So I'm not sure exactly where I cut out there, but this is where my journey started as a 22-year-old investment banking analyst. This is one of very few relics that survived from that year, but it's a picture of me in my cubicle. I didn't love my job, but I learned a lot. Learned about finance, also learned about entrepreneurship from my clients, who were a number of entrepreneurs that were building, selling, acquiring, merging, taking companies public. And really I saw that, and that looked a lot more fun than being an investment banker. And so this is the second picture I have from that year. And this is the picture of me in that same cubicle, complete with my BlackBerry and Diet Sprite, but sending my resignation email to leave investment banking to go start a company. And so this, at the time, I really didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I knew that something was calling me in that direction to go start a company. So that's what I did. And I was really lucky because with me in that journey was this guy, Rich Aberman, who became my co-founder of WePay. But before he was my co-founder, he was my freshman year roommate in college. And so it's a picture of us on the left in Munich with some interesting hairdos looking really cool. A picture of us in the middle when he was the best man at my wedding, and a picture of us on the right-hand side of the screen the day that we announced our acquisition from JP Morgan Chase. And so It's been almost a 20-year friendship at this point, which has turned into an awesome relationship on which we built the company. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a bit. So I quit my job. Rich dropped out of law school, and we were going to go start a company. And so we did what any good former investment banker does. We made a PowerPoint. And so this is one of our slides from that presentation. WePay is the answer. And our idea was pretty simple. We wanted to make it easy for friends to collect money from friends, to split the dinner check, to go on ski trips, and kind of bringing together, social networking, which was kind of a new idea back then, with payments, and trying to make it really easy to sort of track who owed who what, and build a whole product around that. And so we made this PowerPoint. We made tons and tons of trips around Boston, where we were living at the time, talking to any venture capitalist we could find, asking for money so that we could build our product. And so, but we didn't get money. Instead, we got a lot of emails that looked like this. Hi, Bill. Thanks for your note. We did talk about WePay. We're going to be rooting for you from the sidelines. Hi, Bill. Nice to see you last week. We're big fans of yours. Blah, blah, blah. We will continue to be loud cheerleaders from the sidelines. Bill, you're the type of entrepreneur that we would count ourselves lucky to be associated with. Blah, blah, blah. We will cheer you on from the sidelines. Bill, awesome to meet you. Great to spend time together. You got a great reputation. We're excited about how you've navigated the rocky waters of payment innovation. Blah, blah, blah. We're going to cheer you on from the sidelines. So this was a really nice way for a bunch of venture capitalists to tell us no. And we had put a ton of effort into this presentation, a ton of time into raising money. We'd really bet what felt like our careers on this. And it really wasn't working. We got over 30 rejections over the course of about 6 months, as we were trying to raise some initial capital to build the company. And so, we sort of licked our wounds for a bit and thought about what to do next. And so what we did next was we changed gears, and instead of building PowerPoint and trying to raise money, we started building a product. And so this was our very first version of of WePay. I'm sort of embarrassed to look at it. In fact, I'm quite embarrassed to look at it now, but look at that awesome clip art on the left side of the screen. But what was different was that it may not have been the prettiest thing, but it worked. And we were able to actually build a working prototype that made it easy for people to collect money from their friends. And there was a lot of hacky moving pieces on the background. In fact, we weren't even integrated with a payment processor or a bank. We would just sort of get an email on the back end when someone wanted to send money to someone else, and Rich or I would log into our bank account and manually send the money to the person that needed it, or manually debit the money from the other person. So that was actually our first prototype of WePay. It wasn't actually a payments company. It was just a front end with some people on the background moving money around. But that allowed us to actually get some customers, actually produce something that was working, and actually get some real customer feedback. And probably most importantly, that traction helped us get into Y Combinator. So we had run out of money. We were living very frugally. We had lived in the cheapest part of town. We were selling furniture. I was tutoring the SAT, and Rich was tutoring the LSAT to make money. And we were then hiring some kids from MIT on the side to help us code the initial prototype. And so it was a very sort of scrappy initial way to kind of get that prototype working, but it was good enough for us to get into Y Combinator. So Y Combinator invested in us. They wired us $18,000, which at the time seemed like a lot. And we packed our bags and we moved to California, kind of the drop of a hat. We got into Y Combinator, and 2 days later, we packed up my 1998 Toyota Camry and drove across the country. And we sat down foot here in the Bay Area, and we just got on Craigslist and we found the cheapest house we could find. And this is a picture of me signing that lease in Milpitas, California, to rent our first office here in the Valley. Not knowing where things would go, but this was WePay World HQ. And so we took that money, we took a lot of the lessons learned from Y Combinator. We took our initial prototype, which we sort of worked on hardening, and we launched. We got a bunch of TechCrunch articles. My mom was really proud. It's always fun to see yourself in press. And and we were out in the market, and, it felt really good for a couple months. We had customers signing up. We were getting a bunch of inbounds. Investors wanted to invest. It felt like we really had a real company, which was great. But unfortunately, growth sort of stalled. We, once we started getting beyond like our friends and our friends of friends, we didn't really have a scalable way to get long-term, repeatable, viral distribution. And so growth started to slow down a little bit more, and we were left scratching our heads, and we started running tons of experiments. So we built a donation page to help people raise money online. We built an invoicing tool to be able to send bills and invoices to people. We built, and one of the other last things we built was an API to allow software developers to come build on our platform. And pretty quickly, what was an intern project, our API, quickly became like 5% of our business, then 10% of our business, then 20% of our business. And we were like, maybe we should really pay attention to this. This could be a cool thing to work on in the future. And then it became 50% of our business. And we weren't even really investing any time or energy into it. So we said, you know what? There's something here. We would be dumb to ignore this. We have to go all in and become an API company. And so we did it. We shut down. We had a board meeting. I said, we're going to shut down this beautiful consumer application that you're seeing in front of you right now. And we're going to go all in on being an API to allow other companies to build on top of us. And we did it. And so we pivoted. We announced that. We had a whole new strategy. Told the board I was totally wrong, and they invested in all the wrong ideas, but we had the right idea now. And we were fortunate as well to sort of raise a little bit of money to help us make that pivot. And we announced we were going after marketplaces, crowdfunding sites, and other sorts of online platforms that were trying to integrate payments. And that was exciting. It was like a new breath of fresh air. 2.5 years into our company, we decided that we were going to do something new, and it brought some great energy. And the growth was there too, which was super exciting. So this is a slide from our 2014 board presentation. And you can see the company went from really small to pretty big pretty quickly, and you look at these bars, and they may not look that big in absolute terms, but when you look at them on a relative basis, compare the bar, each one of these is a month. Compare what we were doing, 3 or 4 months into what we were doing on month one. You're talking about a company growing 15, 20 times its size, in the span of a couple months. And that was really awesome when we had our board meetings, but really, really painful pretty much every other day. And so everything at the company just started breaking. We had way too much demand on our application, and we were just, our servers were crashing every night. We had employees that were just really stressed out and sort of quitting left and right. We're trying to like onboard people, but we didn't have HR or recruiting to do that. A lot of the systems that we had used when we were this small little 20-person company was just sort of breaking left and right. And this is an email from our VP of sales at the time, which is just like, hey, we're about to lose, 5 of our biggest customers because we just can't keep our servers up. And so it was sort of this simultaneous kind of blessing and curse. But 2014 was a really, really hard year for our company. And I remember it started for me when my wife and I were in Napa Valley, and I didn't have signal or something like that. And I came back, and all of a sudden I had like 55 text messages on my phone, and it was like, the application's been down for 3 hours. We have so many angry customers. Where the heck are you? And that was sort of the start of it. And it just didn't stop for, another 12 months. We were just sort of battling fires on all fronts. So what do we do then? Well, there was a lot of tenacity, a lot of determination, a lot of, just commitment and gutting it out from the team. But we also really started to scale and professionalize the company. And so we brought in a bunch of great leaders across the board from, Chris Conrad came out of LinkedIn to run engineering, John Canfield out of eBay to run risk. Oh, also during this, by the way, we lost about $1 million due to fraud in the span of 1 month. And so there was just sort of anywhere you looked, there were problems really fueled by the growth we were seeing as a company. Steve Palazer became our CFO from CyberSource. Tina Shao joined us from Intuit. Susan Dunn joined us as our general counsel from another startup. Colleen helped us on the HR side. And we sort of slowly started to put the leaders in place who then sort of built out their organizations. And we sort of slowly, not as fast as I would have liked, transformed the company from a small startup hanging on to dear life to a professionalized, scaled technology company. And it was an incredibly painful transition, but a necessary one. And it really put in place the foundation that we needed to survive and then grow as a company. And so we continued to execute on that. We continued to grow, continued to add customers, continued to grow the team. And then in 2017, we started to think about who could we partner with in the industry to help really grow our company. So we started to explore a bunch of commercial partnerships. One of the partners we talked to was the team at JPMorgan Chase. Over the course of a year, we talked about different ways to partner together or to work together in some way. And ultimately ended up merging the two companies together. And so this is one of my favorite pictures in the presentation. It's a picture of Jamie Dimon and I, a couple of days after we announced the acquisition. And you might be wondering, like, that is a really weird picture of Jamie. What is that? Well, he's actually wearing our WePay socks there. So there he is, shoeless, wearing our threads after the acquisition. And so it was a really, one of the things that made this acquisition great was we spent a year getting to know each other. JPMorgan really hadn't made any major acquisitions since Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers imploded. And so part of it was the firm getting comfortable with us as kind of this first big bet they were going to place. And then also for us as an independent technology company based in Silicon Valley, that was really focused on great products and great developer experiences. Could we get comfortable that one of the world's largest banks could really embrace our business model and way of working? And so it took us about a year to kind of really get to know each other, but we ultimately kind of moved forward and merged the two companies together. And so kind of here we are today, 2.5 years later. And one of the things I'm just most proud of is how much we've sort of grown the team and done together as part of the acquisition. So at the time we were acquired, we were about 175 employees. Today, we're just about 400. So we've really grown the team. And we're also launching a bunch of really cool products. So we have helped really redesign the way small business payments work at JPMorgan. We've helped redesign the way JPMorgan works with software developers around payments. And I think also have really tried to bring some of the Silicon Valley culture to JPMorgan to be able to really kind of embrace new ways of building technology and software as the firm competes with fintech companies more and more. And I think in exchange, things go the other way too, where WePay has really learned about operating at huge scale with, solid reliability for clients in a regulated context. And, there's been some great sort of knowledge sharing both ways. And we've certainly been able to grow our business and our team in a way that we would not have been able to do if we were just sort of a standalone company. So that's kind of my journey in a quick, kind of 15 minutes. I wanted to just share a couple of reflections and sort of lessons learned. So first one that comes to mind to me is really about commitment. And so Rich and I were freshman year roommates, and since we were freshman year roommates, we were always talking about startup ideas and business ideas. And we even went as far as like trying to start a business in college, selling advertising on taxis. But I think the difference between those ideas and WePay was that with WePay, we were committed. Like Rich had a full scholarship to law school. He dropped out, left that aside to go do this. I left my investment banking job, and we were doing this full time. Starting companies really hard. There's a million challenges that come at you. And I think it really has to be one of those things that you're thinking about when you wake up and when you take that shower in the morning, and you're thinking about it in the middle of the night when you wake up then, and, kind of spending time on it in between too. And so really being 100% committed, I think is key to really building a successful company. And I think it's one of the scariest parts of the whole process is just making the decision with so many unknowns that you're going to do it and you're sort of all in. Number 2 for me is about controlling your burn rate. And so I think, for people starting out, before you've raised any money, it can be really scary to walk away from a job. And so, the things you can't really necessarily control when you're going to raise money or when your company is going to start, producing money to pay your salary. But what you can control are your own expenses. And so one of the things that I didn't realize at the time, but in hindsight really worked for us was that unlike a lot of the other people I worked with in investment banking, I didn't buy the new car or have the nicest apartment or anything like that. I was able to really bank savings and live really frugally. And that gave Rich and I, a year and a half of runway to figure things out before we were able to finally raise money from Y Combinator and kind of go raise venture capital after that. But it took a long time to make all those mistakes and kind of work through it. And the only thing that let us get through that was that we were really frugal and controlled our burn rate. So this is one of the famous questions from the Y Combinator application, which is describe a time you successfully hacked a system to your advantage. I think that's critical for entrepreneurs. When you're a big company, you've got big budgets, lots of capabilities, big teams. You can sort of take a lot of challenges head on. When you're a startup, you don't have any of those things. Really what you have is you can be nimble, you can be clever, you can be tricky. And so you really, I think, have to lean into how do you sort of outsmart, outthink, outcreative the competition. And so, or just doing the things you need to do to run your business. And so the story that comes to mind here was that when we were applying for our very first merchant account, which is what we needed to sort of process payments, the bank required a in-person office inspection. And if you remember, we were living in our office was that house in San Jose. And so we didn't think that was going to show too well in an in-person office inspection. And so we asked Y Combinator if we could put up WePay signs and sort of work from Y Combinator that day. And we had our inspection. That became our office for the day at Y Combinator for the inspection. And we looked way more legitimate than we might have looked otherwise. I think it's an example of, as a startup, you got to be smart and tricky and do what you need to do. Obviously on the right side of the ethical line, but you kind of have to think outside the bounds of the traditional box to succeed. Next one for me is about embracing change. So we, lots of changes over the course of the company's history, moving from the East Coast to the West Coast, changing from a consumer company to an enterprise technology company, going from an independent fintech company to being part of JP Morgan. More recently, going from being a highly in-person, highly collaborative culture to everyone work from home, literally at the drop of a hat. And so I think one of the other things that is a huge advantage for small companies versus big companies, we can change really fast. But I think change is scary. People don't know what's on the other side of it. And so you need to really sort of create a culture and just personally really embrace that change. And every time we've leaned into a change and really embraced it versus feared it, we've come out the other side better for it. But it's a very sort of hard thing to do just emotionally sometimes as you're thinking about running a company where so much is tied up in its success. Next is invest in long-term relationships. So one of the things I'm most proud of is that, Rich and I, 13 years after we founded the company, still work together today. He's actually on his way over right now. We're going to hang out tonight. So we are, both co-founders, but also friends. And I think those types of really long-term trusting relationships, really provide a strong bedrock to build a company on. And whether that's with your colleagues, with your co-founders, with your investors, with your customers, those relationships sort of, I think, make the world go around. But they don't occur naturally. I think it really requires a commitment to integrity and authenticity and having the tough conversations so that, these relationships can endure all the stresses that get put on them from building a company. Because there are a lot of stresses. You can imagine running out of money, having downtime, not sleeping for days, people quitting, people pointing fingers at each other. Someone makes more money than someone else or vice versa. It's a very unnatural thing to have these close personal relationships in this frenetic environment. But if you can figure out how to do that, I think it's invaluable for the success of the business. And so, but it requires a lot of investment in building those relationships to weather those storms. And then last but not least, just a reminder that it's a marathon and not a sprint. I summarized a 13-year journey in like 15 minutes, but every single step along the way, those days felt a lot longer than they sort of feel in hindsight. Particularly when you don't know what the outcome is going to be. And so, really sort of building the company and your own role and your own sort of stamina around knowing it is a very long race. And, if you drop out on the last mile and you don't finish, you lose. So sometimes it's better. Sometimes you have to go slow to go fast, and make sure that you're pacing, yourself and the team, because it's a incredibly intense, all-consuming experience. So I guess with that, that's a little bit about me and my story, and a couple sort of reflections on the journey. I would be happy to sort of answer any questions or really talk about anything you guys want to talk about. So I guess with that, I will hand it back over to Tammy.
Hey, Bill, thank you. That was great. And the first question I have for you is everybody else invited over for some adult beverages tonight to help you celebrate your birthday?
Yeah, if you can make your way to Northern California, come on down.
Doors open. Cool.
Doors always open.
I understand that you have some great stories about how to generate publicity when you have no money. This is a theme very much with a lot of our entrepreneurs participating in Startup Week. Would love to hear some stories from you about that.
Sure. I think kind of two come to mind. The first was we were, kind of starting out. We were trying to figure out how to generate some buzz. And again, as a small company, you don't have a marketing budget. You don't even have a marketing team. And so how do you kind of get yourself on that radar? And so what we did was PayPal at the time we decided to go pick on one of our competitors. And PayPal at the time was really one of the big gorillas in the space. They were somewhat infamous for freezing people's accounts and not giving them the money that they had collected, or subjecting them to these really sort of torturous risk reserves. And so we were thinking, how do we really call attention to the fact that we can be a more consumer-friendly company than our competition? And so Rich had the really great idea of, what's the largest amount of ice that we could possibly pull together, and how could we dump that on the doorstep of PayPal's big conference every year to call attention to their freeze accounts? And so, we Googled it. We said, okay, ice companies, Bay Area. And we realized that we could buy these 2 300-pound slabs of ice on a pallet. And so we rented a truck, we got a pallet jack, and we went and picked up these 2 300-pound slabs of ice. And then we took a bunch of cash and we froze it, and we put it between the 2 slabs, and we sort of fused them together. And we put a sign on it that said, PayPal freezes your accounts. Next time, choose WePay. And we called up TechCrunch, and we, drove the truck up to the conference, wheeled the ice out, pulled the pallet jack away, smashed the pallet so it couldn't be moved, and we bolted. And we got a whole bunch of media and publicity around doing that. And it was just sort of it cost us a couple $100 to kind of pull the whole thing off. But we had, we realized that there was an incumbent that was a little bit vulnerable, and we could tell a really cool story by, being a little bit more brazen. So that's kind of one story that comes to mind.
That's a good one. Did you say you had another one?
I did, actually. Yeah. So another one.
These are great.
Yeah.
Wait, before you do your other story, tell me this. What was their response? Because that's serious. That's a serious ice dumping.
Yeah. I think PayPal was such a big company that I think if we did it to another startup, they'd take it really personally. But PayPal, I think, was just large. A lot of the folks that worked there weren't like so invested in the brand. We actually got a lot of messages from people that worked there that were like, touche, that was pretty awesome. And in fact, a couple of years later, the keynote speaker there was a guy named Osama Bedier, who was in charge of their developer platform. And 2 years later, we recruited him, and he was on our board. So I think it made some waves internally as well. And I think in some ways we earned their respect, although I'm sure their marketing team wasn't too psyched about it.
That's cool. What's the other story?
So the other story was, as we were building this company, we were in our mid-20s, and we were trying to figure out how do we get media? How do we get attention? And a friend of mine contacted me and said, hey, I got contacted by this casting producer down in LA to go on this reality show called The Millionaire Matchmaker. Would you guys ever want to do it? And I was like, my first reaction was, I'm not a millionaire by any means, but if they'll put me on the show and I can talk about my company, I'll do it. And so we went down. I decided to be on the show. I casted, and they picked me, and I filmed an episode of that show. try to promote the company and, mortgage a little bit of dignity in the process. So that got us some good buzz as well.
Okay, so anybody watching now, if you saw those episodes, we need you to post some thoughts on social media. And if you can pull the footage,
feel free to just keep those to yourself. That's quite all right. We can bury that in the archives.
Hey, listen, those are great stories. We've got a couple questions coming in from the audience. Andrew is asking, what did your traction look like before Y Combinator? So what kind of traction did it take for you to believe in your product or your approach?
Yeah, our traction before Y Combinator was very early. It was basically like our friends using this sort of hacked together prototype. And so it was enough to validate that like we could actually build a product that worked, and enough to validate that like people would use it a little bit. But other than that, it wasn't like we didn't have really great growth. It was really a very, very early but working prototype. I think it wasn't really until we started to see that great growth where people really loved our product after we pivoted the business that I think we really truly believed we were onto something. I think before that we were in how can we rapidly experiment and iterate on the approach. And it took us a long time to get to product market fit, years.
Mm-hmm. Good. All right. Adam's asking, what are your general thoughts on decentralized finance? Hold on, got to get to the question. What are your general thoughts on decentralized finance these days? And are there any blockchain enterprises that you're following?
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of not having a central trusted authority in finance is super cool. And like, there's got to be some really awesome applications of that out there. I think the one that I'm personally most bullish on in general is just the obvious one, which is Bitcoin. And just knowing that not having a central authority around store of value that can affect inflation and things like that, particularly in the age of like the monetary policy we have, I think that's a very interesting idea and probably one of the killer applications of, decentralized blockchain. I think there's tons of experimentation and iteration and people searching for other products to build on blockchain. I think, what folks really haven't answered yet is why is it better to have a decentralized third party or decentralized, blockchain instead of a third party? And I don't think anyone has really found the killer application where that it really, really makes sense, because it's actually hard to build these decentralized applications. They don't perform as well. The products aren't as good as like a company really standing behind it. And so, but that being said, I know someone's going to find some really cool stuff there. So I'm excited about it in concept. And, I'm eager for, someone to figure out that right opportunity there in blockchain.
So you got a big thank you from Andrew in the chat. Thanks for the answer and the talk. He's really glad to hear your story, both the struggles and the wins. And maybe I'll build on that there, the struggles. We hear a lot from our entrepreneurs and leaders, both starting and growing their companies, about being vulnerable when it's tough, what's keeping you up at night, what worries you. Looking back, what worried you in the past that now when you run by that same situation, that same experience, you don't feel those pangs of anxiety or worry that you might have felt earlier on?
Yeah, I think two things were fears I carried for probably the better part of a decade that I've managed to sort of let go of now. I think one was just around running out of money. And when you're a startup, you raise a bunch of money and then you spend that money and you hope you can raise more, or you try to get to profitability. And the constant fear of, if we screw up, if we don't pull this off, my company's in ruins, my reputation's in ruins. I got to lay off all my friends and colleagues and coworkers that really believed in me, and I'm going to let all my investors down that believe in me. That's a heavy burden to carry that all entrepreneurs carry through that process, and it definitely weighs on you a lot. And I think it can make little decisions or little things seem so much bigger and more grave than maybe they might be otherwise. And so the day we hit profitability and then later when we were acquired by JP Morgan and had the backing of JP Morgan behind us, I do sleep a lot better at night knowing that that's not a concern that we have to carry. Although, someday when if I start another company or something like that, that'll be a very real fear yet again. I don't think that's one that you can necessarily let go of. And then the other one for us was also just around downtime. I would sort of like, in the middle of the night, my phone would ring because, servers would be down and we'd have to like wake up and try to, improve, try to just to rescue the application from whatever issues it was having. And we fought that for months and months and months. And then when we brought in some really great technical leaders that, brought in other folks and really build a better scalable application. Now, knock on wood, I sleep very soundly and we don't have, any of the same issues. And so that was a learning for me around really bringing in the right people can be just transformational for a business. Like we were trying to solve it on our own and that was not the right decision. We should have hired folks earlier.
So if you think back, from those things that you're worried about, things you're not as worried about now, deep down, what really motivates you?
Yeah.
And has that been the thing that's always motivated you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think for me, for better or worse, I've always been someone that seeks approval. So I think as an entrepreneur, it's really, you're very front and center. This whole company and creation is in some ways a reflection on you in a big way. And so that's always been something I've carried. And I think as I've gotten older, turning 35 today, I think I'm slowly starting to let go of that and really start to find a different, sort of North Star in me, and knowing that, I can build a company because I really want to, and I think it's fun and I want to go after an idea, but it's my entire value as a person and as an entrepreneur is not necessarily tied up in the success of that company. And so that's a bit of my journey, is to kind of decouple those two. And it's only after really talking to other experienced entrepreneurs that have been able to separate the two, where you can fail as an entrepreneur and still be a great entrepreneur at the same time. That's something I've only really ever gotten from talking to other folks that have been through it before. And I think as a first-time entrepreneur, it's so easy to just keep those two so tightly intertwined, and it adds a lot of stress to the whole thing that maybe doesn't have to exist.
Well, and I think you can fail as an entrepreneur and still be a great entrepreneur. And through it all, you can be a really good human. And in talking to you and knowing your reputation, that does seem to be who you are. You've brought a lot of people along with you on your journey. And I know that from an inclusivity standpoint, that's been part of your focus. Can you talk about the philosophy that you have around it? And also maybe share tips for companies that just are starting out, and even if they're small, how they can make a difference. And I will tell you that when we were looking at the slide of your leadership team, as you built it out, when you were talking about going to that next step, we immediately noticed that it was 50% women. And, for those on the call, we know that's not that common. So you're living your values. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I think I've been really fortunate to have, to have leaders on my team that have really helped us grow there. And I think it can be, honestly, starting out, I don't think I quite realized how important diversity was. It was just sort of, in some ways, I just met the right people at the right time and wanted them on my team because they were just great. And then I think as I've grown as a leader, I realized you have to actually be really intentional about diversity. And, I was lucky to have a little bit of a head start in terms of like some great leaders around the table that were able to help. And so, yeah, it's always been something we've really tried to practice. It's a hard thing to do, particularly in Silicon Valley and in technology, where you don't have necessarily the same pipeline of diverse candidates. And so it really requires proactive outreach from companies and entrepreneurs to build that pipeline and to make sure that they have diverse companies. And, there's a lot of different tactics to do that. It's probably a different discussion, but one of the things that's been really successful for us in doing that is actually building a really high quality internship program. Because if you think about, there's a great pool of candidates coming out of colleges and universities, and there's a lot of structural reasons why there aren't as many really experienced, diverse candidates, because they've faced this uphill battle over the course of decades. And so one of the things that we've really tried to do is try to go and get folks right out of school that have diverse backgrounds, bring them into the company, give them those opportunities and experiences, And in doing so, you sort of build this diverse culture, and it's a flywheel. When you have it, or diverse folks in the organization, they help bring other folks in, and it's something that we really value. It's been a huge part of our progress today.
So you're building these teams and you're growing these individuals through their leadership experiences, internship programs. You must have the ability to really see talent in people. When you look at investing in companies, have you ever just invested in a company because of what you saw in the founder, even if you weren't sure about the business model? Or are you just straight up business model?
No, for me, it's probably 95% founder, maybe 5% market. Like, to me, that's the filter, is just knowing how hard it is to build a company. That for me, the filter I always try to put on is just, is this a person that really has what it takes to be a world-class entrepreneur and to sort of work through it. And what I found is, if you pick the best people find the best business models in the best markets. And it may not be their very first idea, but they get there over time. And that's one of the most fun parts to watch as an angel investor, is when a company starts doing one thing and they struggle a bit, and you really see the tenacity and character of the team as they have to change their strategy and ultimately find something else to do.
Well, I think that's actually a really powerful lens on that, because I think it gives people confidence, back to your earlier point, that you can fail as an entrepreneur around a particular model, but you're still a good entrepreneur. It lends itself to what you just said. If the talent's there, if somebody's strong and you can mold and groom them, they take chances, they think big, there's always potential. And you seem to just find a way to leverage that. As you look into the next year, I'm really curious. You've done so much and had so many great accomplishments. What's next for you, personally, professionally? How will you be fulfilled?
Totally. I'm really excited about all we're doing as part of JP Morgan Chase. There's such an opportunity to help small business owners at really big scale to help improve their businesses. And, less and less people are going into bank branches and buying credit card terminals, and more people are using software and payments are built in. So there's just a ton of change happening in our industry. And to have, the capabilities and culture and technology of a fintech company, and combine that with the capabilities of one of the world's largest banks, is this awesome opportunity that I think is kind of once in a lifetime. So I'm just as excited as ever to keep sort of building great products for our clients there. On the personal front, I've been, hunkered down during COVID, which has been in some ways, really tiring and stressful, and in other ways kind of a nice break from the craziness of life. I usually end up having to travel a lot this time of year, and just reflecting on it's really nice being home, spending time with my wife. So I'm just enjoying, kind of that mix of work and play and relaxation. So.
Is that your silver lining on the pandemic? And do you have any others?
I do. Yeah. I think for me, I feel very fortunate in that, my wife and I are at a stage of life where we don't yet have kids. So this has been, we've had a lot more flexibility. I really feel for people that, live alone or live with elderly parents or have young children at home. I think this has been an incredibly stressful thing for many of those people. And I've been just so impressed by the folks that I work with that have been able to overcome those daily challenges. It's just crazy and superhuman in many ways. I think for me, and maybe for all of us, it's helped me shed a lot of the things that I didn't actually really want to do, but just sort of felt like commitments. And I've been able to be a lot more intentional about my time and, what trips I'm going to go on and who I'm going to meet with or all that. And I think we can probably all afford to be a little intentional, and, maybe next time it won't require a global pandemic for us to do so.
Okay, so it's your birthday, and we're granting you one wish. What's your birthday wish?
Oh, man. I think right now, I know this is maybe not the most positive birthday wish, but, we live here in Northern California, and the wildfires have been just out of control this year, I think, as we've all seen. And I know for you guys in Colorado, same thing.
Yeah.
I was actually in Colorado a couple of weeks ago and got to experience some of that firsthand. So I think my birthday wish would be that we sort of put an end to all the stuff that leads to this, global warming, and we get these fires out and we get the air back to clean air so that people can enjoy the outdoors. Because I think that's definitely feeling that impact at the moment.
Thanks. Bill, you've been so generous with your time, and this story is incredible and it's inspiring. Thank you. Thanks for working so hard to build what you built, but also being so willing to share it so others can think big and dream big and be bold and learn. Is there any last tip you want to leave for all of our participants for Denver Startup Week? If there was just one piece of advice you could leave with them, what would it be?
Yeah, I thank you again for having me, because it's been a lot of fun to kind of share the story and have this conversation. I think my parting piece of advice would be, like, if you are thinking about going to start a company or it's on your mind, like, life is short and it can be really scary, but it was certainly very scary for me, but I would say just go for it. That's the piece of advice. Like, if it's in your heart, just do it. And, if you believe in yourself and figure it out, good things will happen. So thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Big round of applause. And thank you to JP Morgan Chase for believing in Denver Startup Week from the very beginning, helping us launch it and staying with us from physical to virtual. It's really made a big difference. So everyone, get out there, enjoy the rest of Denver Startup Week. Don't forget, we have a headline event tonight with Dave Cohen and our closing keynote with Jenny Fleiss, co-founder of Rent the Runway. Thanks, everybody. Happy Startup Week.